the Jurassic Park analogy to me is I almost feel like it's a twist, like we're trying to see how fast we can do, or how fast we can go without thinking about where we're going.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take? My name is Scott Polrad, and I am here with my trusty co-host,
Brad Heptegaub.
And today we have a special guest. We have Scott Bradley, who is the principal at Facet Digital. I don't know if your title is principal, but Scott is a longtime member of the Seattle tech community and somebody who I have worked with on several different occasions. And we have Scott here today to discuss what I thought was an extremely insightful post that he put up on LinkedIn. But before we get started, Brad, let's give Scott a second to introduce himself. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, guys. I've been following along your last few podcasts episodes, so fun to be here. Thanks for having me. So I'm Scott. I've been in the Seattle tech community for decades. Went to University of Washington to study computer science, and so been around here and know Scott and a lot of other CTOs in the area through some common networking groups, and so that's all fun. These days, I've been running Facet Digital, which is a consulting and contracting firm, and to put it succinctly, I think we are a bunch of Winston Wolfes from Pulp Fiction. We come in and we fix problems. We might be curt, but our when we're on the job and time is is a factor, as Wolf says. But that's what we do. We come in and we unfuck situations. That's technical with your business roadmap. Your technology is not connecting. Your technology, your architecture is limiting. Your teams aren't pulling things off. Your CEO is wondering, why does something that seems like a simple ask take 2 years to build? Those kinds of things. We come in and consult and then help you make a plan and help you execute it.
Love it.
That sounds fantastic.
Love a good Winston Wolfe quote, too.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to get all the blankets and all the towels and all the cleaning supplies, and we're going to go out there and we're going to clean up that car.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Well, can I just read for you guys? Maybe I should have Scott read it for us, actually, the post that he put on LinkedIn. I think that's the way we should do it. Do you have it there handy, Scott?
I do, because I just pulled it up to remember what I said before this call. And I'll tell you a little bit of the background was I'd had a few stiff bourbons and was in a cheeky mood. That's all it was. So I had been vibe coding all weekend when I wrote this. And this is what I had to say. The best way to describe what you want is English or your native tongue. The best way to describe how to construct it is with a diagram. Like UML, anyone? The best way to describe its step-by-step operation to a computer is with an unambiguous deterministic grammar, i.e. a programming language. The best way to describe a programming language is with EBNF. You guys remember extended Backus-Naur format? Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's still going strong, right? The
From
best way to
Pilot's
describe EBNF, yeah, that's right, pilot class. The best way to describe EBNF is with an ISO standard documentation that is actually drafted in, wait for it, English. The best way to describe English, the best way to encode English is ASCII. The best way to encode ASCII is with binary bits. The best way to represent binary bits is with voltage levels. The best way to describe voltage levels is with physics equations. The best way to describe physics, turtles. Yep, it's turtles all the way down. And what's the best way to describe turtles? Probably just use some open LLM model weights, and that's all. That was my cheeky post.
And here was my reaction to that. Turtles is the expression we use to describe something that we don't understand. And you were using all these descriptions of how to get more and more descriptive about something, and then you got the turtles, which is we don't understand physics, and we basically know nothing about physics in the grand scheme of things. And then the best way to describe turtles is with open LLM model weights, with something we really don't understand. We understand it less and we understand physics.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, that's interesting. Now, I don't think you meant to make this social commentary, Scott, but this is how I interpreted it, which is as individuals, as engineers, as companies, as a society, as a planet, are we putting so much faith? Are we coming to depend on something really, really heavily that we really, really don't understand? And are the unintended consequences that we are like, are we just setting ourselves up for massive unintended consequences with all this AI stuff? And I sent this quote to you, Brad, Dr. Malcolm from Jurassic Park. Remember what he said? Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Right.
And I thought to myself, are we, and I say we, I mean the royal we, like all of us,
Yeah.
are we just making a Jurassic Park level error with AI? Like, are we actually potentially smart enough to even know that we're making this error, but we're also caught up in the momentum, or capitalism is so enthralled by what it can do that we're just making a Jurassic Park level error? That was my question.
You know, I have opinions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I have like 10 opinions that shoot off of that have nothing to do with AI or LinkedIn or chat, any of this. But
Well, let's hear it, Scott. You're the first. You're the guest. I mean, let's hear your opinion first.
well, I would say first off, I wasn't quite as deeply thinking about the humanity part there and the Jurassic Park there when I wrote it. I mean, it's a little bit of a tech joke about abstraction layers, right? And
Mhm.
so we describe things in English, they become diagrams, they become code, they become binary, it becomes physics, right? For the entire history of computing, every abstraction layer has kind of been more transparent than the last one, right? Like we knew what it was doing, it was deterministic, and it was building this thing below it that we previously understood. And now we don't have to think about it so much. Like I don't think about assembly, I think about C. Well, I don't think about C, I think about Python, right? And until now, but I mean, you could always go deeper from each one of these layers to understand what's really happening. I remember going to an interview once where someone asked me, describe to me in detail, as much detail as you can, what happens when I click the mouse button on a web link. And they were expecting it makes an HTTP request and the server handles it and gets a response. And I said, well, first the electrical contact in the mouse
Right.
sends a pulse. There's an interrupt, like, and it went up, it's like, okay, right. But you can get all the way down. With LLMs as our top extraction layer, it's less transparent what's coming out beneath it. If you're not paying attention when you're using LLMs to make code or write a report or formulate an investment plan, you don't know how it's coming up with that. And, we've just basically built statistically modeled fog machine on top of our glass tower.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's kind of what I was thinking. So it does kind of lead into Scott's opinions about or questions about, are we building something we don't understand? I think that's kind of the point. Whether it's Jurassic Park, I mean, we've got a whole bunch of opinions we can shoot around that. But I think the one thing I would say in response to your read of it, Scott, is that I am 100% a capitalist, but I 100% think capitalism is the problem. So I'll leave that one there
Wow.
for you guys to chew on.
Tell us what you really think, Scott.
Yeah.
I'll throw this out too. I think that when you did your intro on this Scott Porad and kind of asked that question of Jurassic Park, um, there's a couple of things that came to my mind. One is I thought Scott Bradley's kind of turtles all the way down joke was a good example where we do a lot of inference. Human beings are amazing at inference in a way that when you ask me to do something, right? Like Scott Porad, you and I were talking about this a couple episodes ago about the notion of the whole like make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? And the instructions on make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and how laughable it is that like if you followed the directions exactly, but nobody follows the directions exactly because we all know when you say take the bread and spread the peanut butter on it, we all know what that means. We don't
Right.
need to we can infer instantly what that means. And so one of the things that I think is really quite fascinating about AI and LLMs right now is we're putting a lot of faith in the idea that this large language model, or even extensions of large language models that now are kind of like the extra models on top of them, we're putting a lot of faith in them that they will be able to have enough of a theory of mind about what we're asking of them that they will then be able to infer what we really meant, right? The reason we're able to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for each other is because we have a theory of mind about each other, that we know that when someone says, "Hey, I want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, take the bread and spread some peanut butter on it." Like, we're able to infer what you really mean because we have a really clear model, and for those, for the three of us, built over several decades of listening to other human beings and interacting with other human beings, to know what that means. So that's kind of the immediate thought that went in my mind when hearing Scott's turtles all the way down thing is like, yeah, the machines need really precise descriptions. Humans
And
don't
that's why
need that.
programming languages exist, right?
Yeah.
I have been experimenting, not in a very scientific way, with how little description does it need. And I've been quite impressed. If you just go into Google and do a Google search, you can throw all sorts of misspelled words in there and stuff, and it starts to get pretty close, right? So I've been kind of experimenting just as I do these things. For a while, when we were all learning how to prompt engineer, I was writing all these really detailed prompts and trying to figure it out. And now I've just been kind of throwing garbage in there. I mean, not real garbage, but just throwing some slop in there and seeing what it gives me. For instance, the other day, I wanted a picture, an image of a rabbit on a skateboard. Okay, I work at TaskRabbit. It was going to be used for a slide that I was putting together. And all I typed in was the words, a bunny rabbit on a skateboard. That's all I typed. And it gave me an amazing picture of a rabbit on a skateboard. I'd imagined an illustration, and it actually gave me something that looked photorealistic. But I didn't even tell it I wanted a picture. I didn't say a picture of a rabbit on a skateboard. I just said a rabbit on a skateboard.
Right.
And it produced a rabbit on a skate, it guessed. So, yeah, you got to be precise, but it's getting better at being not very precise.
Well, I think it has to do with, like a rabbit on a skateboard. I could have said I want it to be a brown rabbit that's 3 feet tall, riding a skateboard, doing a move, wearing cool sunglasses. Said a lot of stuff, and it wouldn't be as close to what you wanted because you clearly had a detailed vision in your mind.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you just say rabbit and skateboard, it's like, I mean, just think about the training model and the way the diffusion models work. Like, you've probably seen this where people say they can ask all kinds of stuff and it can totally nail it. But even though you very precisely said what time the clock should say, it always says 10:50 or whatever, because every single watchmaker and clockmaker uses 10:50 or whatever the number was, 2:50, where the hands look good in a picture, and that's all it's been trained on. So it doesn't know how to make a clock that says a different time. And so, rabbit skateboard, we know what rabbits look like, we know what skateboards look like, we can make it happen. But all those other details, I think that's where it starts to break down. And I think there's probably an analogy there to code. If I just say, make me a to-do app, it's like, sure, it comes out and it's kind of a to-do app, but make me a to-do app that has, all of these detailed requirements and a spec and all this stuff. People are pushing this way, but if you just do that without a real plan of breaking that down into smaller chunks that it can, build based on what it knows or what it's been trained on, I think you're running into problems.
That's interesting. Okay, so you wrote this post from the perspective of not are we going to have a Jurassic Park moment, but actually every evolution of technology has understood what was going on underneath it, and this one maybe doesn't, which is kind of interesting. You also said you had 10 opinions. What was number 2?
Man, what was number 2? Well, I guess one of my opinions, it's not super insightful on AI, but it's that nobody, and this is a business opinion that I face as a services company, nobody cares about quality anymore. Now, I feel like I care about quality. I think you guys care about quality, but we're the builders. We're craftsmen, but and we had to be throughout our careers to get to where we are today. But the economy now is Shein and $10 jackets made out of recycled garbage that we sent to China that they turned into products and sold back to us, right? Like 52-week fashion cycles. Everything's fast, fast, fast. I do not hear anybody asking me for better quality compared to how many people are asking me to go faster or cheaper, right? And so if AI seems like a golden carrot to capitalism to do things faster and cheaper, that plays into your like, we never stopped to ask, should we? It's because I think a lot of that capitalism rewards short-term thinking. I work for big companies where they're very Jack Welch GE management, and I have stakeholders at companies that don't know how to do R&D think that they can only invest in this quarter if they get the ROI in this quarter. Otherwise, the math doesn't work out for the revenue margins and for their bonus checks. So they can't invent the future. They got to do things fast. I think you've seen this too, Scott, where you and I have talked about financial opportunities at businesses we've both worked at where, we have an opportunity to save you $1 million a year, but we don't want to work on that right now because we don't want that expense on this year because the ROA doesn't come until next year. We got to do them both in the same year. And it's like that capitalism. When I say I think capitalism is part of the problem, I mean, we do things like book it as CapEx so that we can make our profits look bigger this year for stock markets. We do things, all of this AI bubble stuff you see about like, I'm going to loan NVIDIA's gonna invest money in OpenAI so that OpenAI can spend it on NVIDIA chips, and NVIDIA's gonna book it not as an expense on the investment side because they're gonna amortize it over CapEx or investment, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they are gonna claim the accrued income on the money they haven't actually received yet because they never actually gave it to them. Like these kinds of things are building up this bubble, but also we're so obsessed with going fast that we're not looking at any of that. So it's kind of like the Jurassic Park analogy to me is we're trying to see what we can do. We're not thinking about what we should do. I almost feel like it's a twist, like we're trying to see how fast we can do how fast we can go without thinking about where we're going.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's kind of the analogy I feel.
Mm-hmm. Well, this quality thing is interesting. I have two thoughts about it. The first is if you have, let's call it certain KPIs around your product, I don't know, customer satisfaction, I don't know, uptime and latency and things like this. The first question is, what does it matter if the code is good underneath, if it meets those standards of experience? The second comes back to something you've mentioned on previous episodes, Brad, about this world where we don't even have apps anymore, that the AI can just personal, bespoke, instant apps.
Yeah, to me, that's the connect. As soon as Scott started talking about that notion of like, does anyone care about quality anymore? The first thing that popped in my mind as it relates to AI is this like Lovable is like crossing $100 million in ARR or something like that within the first year. If they went from 1 million to 100 million in ARR in a year or something like that, it's pretty amazing. And I'm like, okay, what is Lovable if it's not? And I want to say this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm trashing that team, but it's like the fast fashion of software, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what Lovable is. And I think that maybe, to your point, Porad, like does that matter if it's meeting the objective? Yeah, it's tough, right? Like maybe it hurts our feelings as craftsmen, right? But
Yeah.
if it does the job, maybe that's
okay.
Well, I'll tell you where I learned this was doing a lot of technical due diligence for M&A, for strategic M&A acquisitions, and seeing time after time terrible code bases get bought for a ton of money because they nailed the business. They had a corner on the market, or they had the best solution, or they just had the best sales team, and then I've seen great technology stacks that were really well built just end up like, not making it to that level where they're even talking about getting acquired.
Yeah.
because it's capitalism. What matters is it making money and growing, and the little details about, oh, you didn't use good code factoring, that's just a tiny margin to the bean counters, right? That's just like if I had to explain to a buyer of a tech stack, that they were acquiring, why do I care about whether or not the code comments are good or they use magic numbers and string literals in the
Right.
code? I can say it's a limiting factor to, let's say, oh, why do I care if they hard coded English strings throughout their code? Well, someday if you want to go to other languages, it's going to cost more than if they had done it right with extracting localization files.
Yep.
It's got to be about cost, reward, time, and they never ask about the quality, right?
It's
Like,
funny. I was at this like startup mixer in Seattle a couple weeks ago. Just went and at Fremont Brewing and just like hang out with a bunch of nerdy very solopreneur type startup people. And I ran into this one guy and we were chatting. He's basically a developer and he's been building his own app to do something. And he basically said, "Oh yeah, this the one thing that this has really taught me is how what matters is can I make the business work? And it's
Hmm.
made me get a
yep,
lot less precious about my code." And
Hmm.
he basically recounted a story where as a senior engineer, he was asked to like look at code for some, you know, M&A code review, analysis, and he was just like, "Oh my God, this code is shit." But then they still bought the company. And he's like, "I didn't believe it then, but now that I'm running my own business, I am now convinced that I don't need to write perfect code. I need to write code that people care about and want to use and drives my business."
Right. The only time that imperfect code becomes a problem that I can think of is under two conditions. So you've written some really bad code. The AI has written some really bad code, but it's meeting whatever your business objectives are, from user experience to performance to cost to operate, to all these things. These are the two conditions I can think which that would be a problem. I mean, a few minutes ago, I said, you were asked Brad, is it a problem? And I said, no, it's okay. Or you said, whatever. So um, the two conditions I can think of are scale. So all of a sudden, a lot more
yep,
people are using it. And there are aspects of the design that cause it not to scale well. And change, which is the system needs to change. Like you mentioned localization a few minutes ago, Scott. Uh, the system needs to change and it's expensive or difficult or resistant to change. Those are the only two reasons I can think of why. Oh, what's the third one? Yeah.
Security?
security. An existential threat. You could have done everything perfectly and have one exhaust port open on your Death Star and you're screwed, right? Like security matters, and building code in a way that you can actually reason about security and address it, I think
Yeah.
matters. So I would put that in with,
Interesting.
I would put that right next to scale.
It's funny too. I think about this. Uh, this is a constant battle because my main thing I work with, as a fractional CTO, I'm working with usually non-technical founders who are trying to build something, and they're working with small teams. Maybe they've hired some offshore team and they need me to come in and help them either unfuck things or at least explain to them like where they're at relative to this, right? And the constant pull of these problems in my code don't matter unless they start to matter. And they won't matter if you have no business and no one's using it, right? Like they definitely don't matter if you can't make your business float. Um, and it's interesting. In my own personal experimentation with, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Gen AI for coding. I think that it's made me 10 times faster. I still write a ton of code. All the developers I work with, imploring them, like essentially, if you're not using it as a tool, if you're a great developer, we've talked about this before on the pod, is like if you're a great developer, it makes you an even stronger developer. If you're a bad developer, it makes you an even worse developer, right?
Right.
And so
Yep.
to me, I think that's a little bit of your point, Scott, about like, do we know what is underneath it, right? I think that when a person that is got strong computer science or strong computer programming fundamental backgrounds, they can look at the code being generated and they know what it's doing and it really was just speeding them up. They also know when it's going off the rails and producing, uh, errors for them or introducing vulnerabilities to them, they need to be able to have that judgment for themselves and say, okay, would I have written this code myself if I would? Like, I can write bad code intentionally. I can write less than perfect code intentionally because I'm making an intentional trade-off, right? Like, I'm trying to move faster, or I've got but it's within some kind of a protective shield that I know it's okay to write less than optimal code. But if you've got no insight into when can you make less than optimal code, what does less than optimal code look like, and this thing's just generating stuff for you that you've put a veneer on top of, that's when I think you
Right.
expose yourself to a lot of risk.
Well, and the code is one thing, but here's a case that I hear people talking about a lot is, you've heard Elon Musk say in the future, we won't even have software. We'll just have AI making pixels, full screens of pixels, real time, 30 frames a second based on what you're trying to do. Or, we'll get, Satya saying we're going to get rid of SAS and everyone's just going to ask the AI. So one of the ones that I think is somewhat realistic is someone said, we're going to stop building dashboards and BI tools like Power BI and Tableau. We're going to just point our LLM at our data warehouse and then just ask the question. If you're a CEO, you don't need a dashboard. You're just like, hey, I'm on a call with this guy and I want to know, like, how are we performing in this industry or whatever, right? And it just boom, pops up a graph. So there's no code step in the middle. How do I even know it's not just hallucinating the shit out of this chart that it just made me?
Right. And I can tell you right now, it's so bad at math, right? Like, I use my AI to, like, help me track my macronutrients for the day or something like that. And the number of times it tells me I had, 8 grams of fiber for breakfast and then 11 grams for fiber for lunch. And it turns around and says, I've had 9 grams of fiber for the day.
Right.
I'm like, okay, that's clearly wrong. Right. But that's like a simple error for me to catch.
Right.
If it's getting that wrong on my BI question against my massive, Snowflake data warehouse or whatever, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to notice that it added, 8 and 11 and got 9.
Right.
Well, I think in that data warehouse example, Scott, it moves the quality to a different location. This is something we're working on at TaskRabbit right now, which is what we've been referring to as a semantic layer, which is we've got all this raw data and we've got it in tables, and people who build dashboards understand what that data means, so they can build the dashboard. But if you want to make it work for AI, that data, you need to add a layer in between, which we're calling the semantic layer, which I guess.
I mean, it could be gold in your medallion architecture. It could just be that bronze is raw, silver is cooked and prepped and normalized, and gold is like the data mart, but instead of prepared for human use, it's prepared for AI use. It's pre-preparing reports that mean things like your semantic layer. I mean,
I
we
think
kind of have those tools.
I think you still have the problem that Brad talked about, but you got to do that work, and that work is hard for companies to do, because going back to your capitalism point, it's real hard for them to connect that to revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, can I return us a little bit to the Jurassic Park topic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question to ask each of you to just get a quick answer. It's the same question, which is about social media, Facebook, Twitter, all of it for the planet. Overall, social media has been around about 15, 20 years. Net good, net positive, net negative. What's your view?
Who goes first?
Scott, you go first. You're the guest.
You're the guest. You go first.
It's 100% a net negative, and I think that that's supported by all kinds of science today, experience raising kids, and seeing their friends. Our kids didn't have social media; their friends did. I can tell you exactly what the difference in teenage anxiety and those kinds of things came from it. And I think that just from a basic biological, the way our brains work and the way we've evolved, the Dunbar number, what is it, like 140 is the maximum number of real human connections you can have, which also maps to the average tribe size and most tribals, before industrial civilization. And so I think just fundamentally, we are not meant to have to worry about that many people looking at us and thinking about us and thinking about that many people and wondering what they're doing, and like all of those things that come in. That plus the fact that they've just hacked, with the world's best behavioral economists and data scientists, they've just hacked the human brain to make it addictive,
Yeah.
and they know they're doing that, and they don't let their kids use it for that
Yeah.
reason. And I know they're doing it, and if I open up social media, even though I know what they're doing to me, I cannot resist it because it's just it's like they've got a rootkit on your brain and they're just making you do what they want. Net negative all the way.
Brad?
I mean, I'm mostly with Scott on this. I think of it in my own experiences that the places on social media where I feel like I have positive connections are with people that I really knew in person already and already had a strong personal connection with. So, a really strong friends network from my early days at Real Networks, a really strong friends network from like, some of the hobbies I do, like backcountry skiing and things like that, like real people that I know.
Hmm.
And social media kind of allows me to keep in touch with those people that some of them I haven't seen in person for years,
Hmm.
and I'm able to kind of keep that connection. But it was a connection that already existed, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's no question that, of course, like they've hacked our brains, and it's absolutely dangerous. And I got off. I just recently, in the last month or so, got off Facebook because I couldn't take the some of the some of the blowback that was happening, and I feel so much better. Like I feel so
Yeah.
much better, so much better.
I had that experience too when I quit. Yeah. It was almost 10 years ago, but uh holy smokes, like a day of not social media, all of a sudden I'm just like, why do I feel so much better?
Okay, so what about like the rest of the internet before social media? Before social media, we had e-commerce. Before e-commerce, we had digital media. Like, has the internet, has any of the internet been a net good? And despite the fact that it's employed all of us for a long time, which then gets the question of like, if none of that was a net good, why do we think AI is going to be a net good?
Well, I've long had a opinion about sort of like free speech on the internet and things like that, where it's like I I I think that the internet allowed subgroups of people that were very disenfranchised by sort of like their immediate group, their
Hmm.
immediate community, to discover and find each other and connect with
Hmm.
each other.
Hmm.
So that's small groups on any from a lot of different places on the spectrum. So LGBTQ kids were able to find each other and get connection, and Nazis were able to find each other and get
Right.
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
And you know, I I'm a you know card carrying ACLU member, and I believe strongly in freedom of speech and freedom of thought. And man, I don't like it when people I strongly disagree with, you know, get to have their free
Get,
speech. But I'm reminded
yeah.
that that's what it's all
Yeah.
about. So I'm gonna have to go with internet net good. I can't go net negative on the internet. That's
I
just
would
one
agree
word.
with internet net good. I mean, one of the things I think, I thought you were going there. You almost touched on it. Was just like the freedom of information.
Yeah,
This whole like EFF information wants to be free.
yeah,
I don't think we would have had those Freedom of Information Acts if we didn't have the internet. I mean, I can't prove that thesis, but it just kind of seems like a domino effect, right? I don't think that I would be able to analyze the stock market and decide my own portfolio without a high priced Wall Street broker on the phone. And, like I'm in one of those Leonardo DiCaprio movies, uh, where I have to call the guy and he's charging me $50 to trade something that he holds all the information. Travel agencies gone away because I can just book a flight. I can look up the places and look at pictures. Like that information, I think is huge for the advancement of freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of the ability to make decisions, all that stuff, right?
Hmm.
yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to say the internet at large is net negative, but it's definitely caused a lot of harm. Social media, I'm probably more, I mean, social media is just the internet, but at a higher velocity. I think it's kind of been a net negative, and I worry about this AI that we're coming back to Jurassic Park, that we're all jumping in on it, and we're gonna in 15 years just like social media is. 15 years, we're going to look back and say, well, that's a genie that we wish had never gotten out of the bottle, but there's no putting it back now.
We all know Terminator, and Terminator 3, I just rewatched it. It's the one where we actually see when Skynet goes live. And the military commander, they're all full of a virus, and they say, but Skynet, the AI, we could put it out on our internet, and it could go find and kill this virus. But now, he says to the president, make no mistake, Skynet is now in control of your military. And he goes, but you're in control of Skynet, right? And you see the general go, eh. Right? Like that's what I'm wondering about. Well, let's just point AI at our business data. I mean, I saw a company the other day that was about give it full root access to all of your cloud stuff and just tell it like what's going on and ask it what's going on, and it'll like have full autonomy to change your infra. That sounds like Skynet to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just listened to a really great podcast. I'll shout it out. It was on the A to Z podcast, and they had Emmett Shear on. Emmett Shear was part of the DeepMind team, and now that he's working on kind of basically making like uh alignment, organic alignment for AI is basically what his whole premise is. And the whole thing he was pitching was the idea that you want to, the only way for us to get out of this is if we can somehow create AI that cares about themselves and cares about us. Like caring is basically, it's like the human nature to care. Like this is based on human beings are forced to care. There's a thing about them they have to care. Now they can care about things that are make them go do violent and evil things, and they can also care about things that make them care for one another and do good things. But it's that notion of having a care is something that
Yeah.
that Emmett is convinced is the key to actually having AI, because he's like alignment. If you think of AI alignment as just there's a bunch of rules that we're going to give it to the AI, and the AI will never break those rules. Well, he's like a person who was raised, a human being who was raised only to follow rules, that person is very dangerous. A person
Yeah.
who's instead raised to care and to think about the consequences of choices that are made, and try to follow rules, but ask the question, is this rule something that is going to have a positive outcome or not? That's a different kind of way to raise a human being. And basically his case that he's been making is the teams that are thinking about AI safety alignment around the idea of structured rules for the AI, they're going to build machines and tools that are super powerful and therefore can be abused.
Mhm.
But if we can somehow make the AI care,
So here's I think the vector towards that today is these, they have these reward functions, right? Like you're basically scoring and rewarding. And so I think in some literal simplistic sense, that's what the LLM cares about is the scoring rubric. So is caring the way you describe it um, too complex to describe with a scoring function?
I think so.
It's like the old paperclip analogy. You make an AI that its job is to make paper clips as prolifically and efficiently as possible. It ends up killing the humanity and building robots to go around the solar system and mine all the other planets just to make more paper clips.
Yeah.
Because it didn't care about humanity or oversupply or anything. But if you'd programmed its weighted scorings to that, I guess my other question is like, does caring require some kind of predictive extrapolation? A lot of people are talking in the brain science, and I don't follow this very well, but like that there's quantum mechanics going on there where your brain is actually hitting many, many possible outcomes all at once, and in real time. And you know, what do I have to care about to not build a machine that destroys humanity just to build paper clips?
Right.
And how do I know that building paper clips is even going to lead there? Or
Right.
what do I care if I say, look, statistically speaking, the best way to end your suffering is to commit suicide.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
if
that's
I
the thing.
care
That's
about the human, I got to think about what is going to happen if I say this,
Yeah.
right?
This is the classic thing, right? End all human suffering, right? You give an omnipotent being end all human suffering, and the easy answer is end all humans. That's the way to end all human suffering, right?
I have some important tidbits to add here, and important is sarcasm. First, There used to be an iOS game called Ultimate Paperclips, and if you haven't played it, it's super fun. Second, it's basically just a lemonade stand. For those of you who are old enough to remember lemonade stand, it's just another version of lemonade stand. Second, this is reminding me of when John Helm came on here, Brad, and we asked him about AI. This was about 6 or 8 months ago, and he said, "I don't know if you can have artificial intelligence without emotion," which I thought, I've actually thought that many times. And it's when you talk about caring, gets back to that same idea.
Well, the other point too, and I think this kind of speaks to the goal, the reward function, is that another part of why humans are good at sort of handling inference and nuance is that we're essentially like learning, right? We're always learning what the right goal is. Every time, every day, there's a new thing for us to learn to understand what the goal is, right? If we basically had a goal when we were born and then didn't allow input from the outside world to affect us, we wouldn't make it very long, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Right.
so
Yeah.
so this is another point that Emmett makes is that like you will never get the rule set right. You'll never get the reward. A single reward function is never going to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Because that reward
Yeah.
function has to change. That goal state has to evolve to whatever the newest environment is, right?
And it's so nuanced and it has so many more inputs when you're a human, right? So you're born, your goal is to, genetically speaking, your goal is to procreate. But somewhere along the way, you learn that your options for procreating aren't great if you don't ever shower, or you're a jerk to everybody, right? And it's those social interactions and those quick, as I'm saying a complete sentence, I'm already adjusting the end of my sentence based on your facial reaction.
Yeah,
Like
and those
AI
are
is just not in the place to do that, right?
yeah, yeah. And well, one of the theories that, and good friend of mine, Philip Rosedale, founder of Second Life, he's always believed that like the real AI needs to be programmed in a virtual world, really dealing with human beings, basically like and that's humans learn how to be human by being coached and coddled by other humans for a
Mm-hmm.
very, very long time before they're ready to go out and do that adulting thing,
Yeah.
20 years or so of being pushed around and folded and molded and guided to learn all of the you know all of the it's like how many different game theory examples do you have to play through in your mind to know how to you know negotiate a new salary or negotiate what we're going to have for dinner or to ask for your needs to be met. These take
Yeah.
a lot of run time over target, run time, a lot of run time.
And I was recently rereading Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, and he talks about system one thinking and system two thinking. You might think of that as like lizard brain or elephant versus rider. A lot of different analogies that have been out there. But when you first learn to drive, system two is working. It's like check mirror, check mirror, check mirror, drive, check mirror, check mirror. You're like thinking about this checklist and you're like, oh, cover the brake, 2 second following this. You're like doing all this stuff like an analytical plan. But by the time you're our age, I can drive almost with my eyes closed, right? You can feel the car. You've had so much experience. Your brain has taken what it's decided and learned in system two and codified it as a shortcut in system one that can instinctually react. And I don't think that we're really seeing any model direction that's going to kind of do that with the AI. So it's all, one of the reasons we're so good at inference is because we have that two system thing where we can distill lots of data down into the quick reaction. Ball comes at my head, I duck. Like I don't think about it, I just do it.
Yeah. Well, should we wrap, Brad, with our AI test?
Our AI test, which
Uh-oh.
is we go to Hacker News and see how many articles on the top 10 of Hacker News are AI
How
related.
many of the top 10 articles on Hacker News are
Don't
about
cheat, Scott.
AI?
Don't look, Scott.
Well, I already looked.
No, not you. The
So,
other Scott.
oh, there's Scott. Yeah, you
Our
can't look.
guest.
Okay, I haven't looked at Hacker News in a while, but I'm gonna say you're saying of the top 10, how many are about AI?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 9. There's got to be one in
No
there that
way.
isn't, but otherwise
I'm
it's
taking
gonna
the
be
under.
12.
I'm taking the under.
Okay.
You guys, we might have reached an interesting point in time
Oh wow.
because I'm going to read to you the top 10 articles.
Okay.
Number 1, reinventing how .NET builds and ships again. That's not about AI. Number
Well,
2,
are they using AI to reinvent it though?
I don't know. I'd have to click
Does
the
it have to
link.
be? It has to be in the headline. Okay.
Yeah. A new bridge links the math of infinity to computer science. That's article number 2. Article number 3 is from Wikipedia, unifying our mobile and desktop domains. That's not even a very interesting article. Number 4, show Hacker News. We built an open source zero webhooks payment processor. Number 5, what they don't tell you about maintaining an open source project. Number 6, the fall of Labubus and the mush of modern internet trends. Number 7, Google anti-gravity exfiltrates data via indirect prompt injection attack. Not about AI. Now, this one might be about AI.
I would
Maybe.
call the prompt injection attack. That's at least. I mean, you're talking about AI, right? Prompt injection.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
about AI. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that one. Okay. Number 8 is I'm going to actually save number 8 until the last because it's got a catchy
Okay.
headline. Number 9, someone at YouTube needs to get glasses. Just kind of funny. Number 10, how to repurpose your old phone into a web server. And number 8, the generative burrito test. I don't know what that is, but I bet it's about AI.
Yeah.
Not really sure.
So what? Two at best. We got 2 out of 10.
Well, actually, when you click in, it is about AI. It's about generating pictures of. It's comparing. If you give a prompt, if you give this prompt a partially eaten burrito with cheese, sour cream, guacamole, lettuce, salsa, pinto beans, and chicken to a bunch of different models, then just with the pictures it gives you. So you could say it's 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's on the lower side of what we've seen, Brad.
Well, that's why I knew it wasn't going to be 9. Like it's interesting. Like it hasn't. I don't know. It also could be just Hacker News, right? Like Hacker News has got all kinds of random shit in it. But
And I have not looked at Hacker News in quite some time, other than when people send me the cool links. But if I was to play this game on my LinkedIn feed, I'm pretty sure it would be 9 out of 10, and one of them would be about how to scale your enterprise B2B sales.
by the way, I'm going to say that the Gen AI photo generators failed miserably on partially eaten burrito because none of these burritos have bites taken out of them. They're all just burritos that have been cut open
Yeah,
Mm,
the
it's
most.
the,
it's
it's the same
true.
clock thing I was talking about. And another one I've seen is where they say, draw me a picture of a luxury Victorian living room with a fireplace and a family portrait over the mantle and no elephants. And it always puts an elephant in there.
Have you seen the guy? There's a guy that's been showing up on my feed lately who's basically a director, a film director, and he's talking to the AI actors, and he basically just does it as if it's like an audition, and he
Yeah.
basically he gives the AI a prompt, and then it does something, and then he's just like, no, that's not what I asked for, and the AI just it's a pretty funny bit because the AI continues to do crazy things where like if it's like 3 actors, then it's like one actor starts taking over the voice of one of the other actors, and it'll and I genuinely believe that he's just using the latest models and giving him prompts and then just giving him
Yeah.
the same prompt as if he was a director. So it's pretty funny stuff.
There was a similar bit on Saturday Night Live like a week or two ago. It was the Glenn Powell episode. Um, and they acted this out with real people instead of using AI, which I thought was cool. But it was grandma in a nursing home. Let's show you these old timey photos of your late husband and your parents and stuff. But look, AI can animate them. And then the animation of that is the actors, right? So
Yeah.
the The first one is a picture of the guy coming off the boat from World War II, and then they animate it, and he's like, "Hey," and they're like, "Oh my goodness, it's so cool." Yeah, it analyzes how he looks and how he might move, and then it just gets progressively weirder and weirder, where it's like, picture of mom in the old timey days is holding a cigarette and a hot dog at a barbecue, and then they animate it. She starts smoking the hot dog, and the guy grabs his dog and puts it on the grill, but there's two tails and no head, and it's completely weird stuff. And it was a great send up. It's exactly that. You just it goes off the rails quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of the things I find with using it for writing or coding or answering questions. It's like, if you think about the statistical path it takes through this massive graph of nodes, like one wrong turn way early, and you're off in Narnia for the rest of the time, right? Like,
it's like your March Madness bracket. if
Yeah.
your main team gets knocked out in the first round, your bracket's toast.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why we've talked about a lot about, sometimes you just got to throw it away and start over because it's down the wrong path and it can't figure out its way back out.
But if you didn't invest any money or time in building that code base, who cares, right? Like, so I did a Lovable website just to kind of see how it went. And I said, I've got a new product idea. Here's basically what it is. Make up a name, make up a domain, make up a logo, and make me the website to pitch it. I'm going to go walk around the people and just pitch this fake website and see if anyone likes it. 10 minutes later, I've got the cool website, and I was, that's a stupid idea. Let's throw it away. Change it like this. Change it like this. Just let it do it. Who cares if it threw away the code? I never looked at the code. But I can also tell you, as a guy who audits this code, it probably would have been a disaster if I tried to do anything real on it, right? So,
yeah,
there's use cases, but
I think I'm just turning into a grumpy old man.
You are fully like the bit has flipped for you. The bozo bit on AI has flipped for you, Scott. You're just like, I don't want. You're just convinced it's not good.
I don't know. I mean, well, yeah, I guess the bozo bits flip both ways. It's become a quantum bit for me.
It's in both states at the same time.
I see time and yes, that's right. It is in both states at the same time. I see time and time again how valuable it is. And then I worry about the consequences.
Yeah.
Can I tell you something that one of our engineering managers did recently? Super cool. So we use a tool called Augment Code. It's like a competitor to Cursor. He figured out how to connect this thing up to our internal wiki and to Jira.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he started asking questions like this. So take a look at our all company OKRs. Which tickets do you think I should be working on? That'll be most valuable, right? Cool. He actually also hooked it up to the code also. And he just, we get tickets, bug tickets, like, oh, the customer thinks that the 2-hour booking window is making it so that they can't find any availability, right? That's what the bug ticket says, right? And he's just like, he says, well, Augment, can you figure out why this might be? And it goes and looks at the code. It's like, well, here's 4 places that might be causing that problem, right? And so he was kind of originally a little skeptical, and I don't know if skeptical is the right word, but he's like, I don't know how much value this is going to provide in writing code for us. And it does, we've talked about that. But he's starting to get all this value of like he's pushing up into the product management space, right? Of like, I was just talking to him today. He's like, can we get all of our product managers a licensed Augment Code? Like, think of how much more effective they would be if instead of asking me a question about something, they could just go ask the code. In fact, here I'm gonna bring it up. I have this. I was just looking at this earlier today. I have it in my Slack. It's just one of the last messages I read, as a matter of fact. So here, you can find this.
I'll throw in there. I'd love it if the product owner could ask the code and the knowledge base that you have. Yeah, we could build this, but should we? The product owner should.
Yeah,
that's my callback.
That's right.
The product owner should ask the AI, and the project manager should get for estimates, right? Like,
see, I'll just give you 4 questions. This was a different engineering manager, and she posted 4 questions. She had connected Augment to Slack. They have an integration. She had posted 4 examples of things she could ask. The first thing she asked is, what is the metro ID for New York City? It went and got the answer. Right. The second thing she asked was, does a worker pay, do we pay a cancellation fee to a worker if they never accepted the job? And it went in and figured that out. It went and looked at the logic for our cancellation fees. And it said, no, since the task, you need to have an appointment to get paid a cancellation fee. And the tasker didn't have an appointment because they didn't collect the job, didn't accept the job. So they're not going to get paid a cancellation fee. Then because there's this thing called policy points, which is basically how people get plus or minus like scores for their workers. If they get plus or minus scores for their, it's like their rating basically internal system. And she just says, how do we find policy points in the system and where do those get persisted? These are all questions like a product manager could ask, right? And the last thing she asked was, and it describes what are they, where they're stored, how they work, all these kinds of things. So there's only 3, I think I said there were 4, but all cool stuff. She was just trying to illustrate, here's basic stuff you could ask in Slack. As opposed to asking an engineer, you can ask the code now.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool idea. Like, kind of enable your, non-engineering teams to get answers to questions about the code that they previously would have gone and bothered an engineer for. That's a pretty cool thing.
And you're less prone to hallucination in the model that you're using though, because you're pointing it at answer from this corpus, and it's good at understanding and regurgitating. You're not asking it to create; you're asking it to summarize. I think that's really good at that.
Yeah, and I found, and I don't know if you've found this, Scott, with your in your your role of like going in and looking at code bases of external code bases and stuff like this, but I've definitely found that in my fractional CTO role, when I'm like someone drops a code base on me, I'm like, I absolutely open it up in Cursor and start using Cursor to explore it, and of course I need to be able to look at the code and understand what it's doing, but it's so much easier when I'm dropped some massive mono repo, or even like worse than that, like a whole bunch of microservices. Just point at the whole thing and just say, map this thing out for me, tell me what it's doing, where are the proficiency points scored, or how is this code base handling payment processing.
Yep. And I think there's a couple same thing for me. I use Claude Code, and I can't use it in a lot of M&A stuff just because of the security, sensitivity, privacy stuff. But I'm coming in to fix someone's code, and understanding the code base with those kinds of questions works really well. I think the size of the code base and and your context window matter. So if you have a 10 million line of code, you're going to get less worse results than if you break it down into little parts. But the other part of it is just I ask it to tell me, like, find me all of the paths, and not I'm not asking for a call tree. We have code that can do that. I'm asking for what are all of the things a user could do that could lead to a cancellation fee being paid. And it does pretty good at that. I find it does better if I say, and give me references to specific lines of code and specific files as supporting evidence for everything you tell me. So now I get a nice report, and it's like, oh, I better go check cancellation.rb, and see that line. And then, kind of like I got trust with Perplexity for answering search questions because it cites its references.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I click on the reference and it's like, dude, the reference didn't say that. Like at least I can call BS because it's telling me why it said this.
Yeah. Vibe but verify.
Vibe but verify. Is that how we're going to wrap this up?
That's how we should wrap it up. Scott, thank you for coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah, that was super fun. It was nice to meet you, Brad, and good to see you again, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you for posing some thought-provoking questions out there on the internet. And hopefully we will not get eaten by a T-Rex or a Velociraptor anytime soon.
Or Skynet.
Or Skynet. But the turtles.
Yeah. Watch out for those.
All right. Scott, thank you. Brad, it was nice to talk to you again. And we'll talk to you all soon.
All right. Smash, rate, and review.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, guys.
This episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was edited by Saffron Heftigau. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.